I would like to call this meeting of the New Britain Board of Education to order. It's March 5th, and the time is 6:01 p.m. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ms. Santana, would you lead us, please?
Gladly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Ms. Edwards, roll call, please.
I have President Joseph Listro,
Here.
Vice President Barbara Marino,
Here.
Secretary Diana Reyes,
Here.
Mr. Anthony Kane with the C,
Yo.
Salvador Escobar,
Yes, ma'am.
Anthony Kane with the K,
Here.
Miss Annie Parker,
Here.
Miss Joan Pina, here, Jose Rivera,
Here.
and Miss Tina Santana.
Right here.
Thank you. And a moment of meditation. Thank you. And we don't have anyone signed up for public participation, is that correct? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to reports, starting with the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Pleasure to see everybody tonight. My report will be very brief. We have two very detailed reports from Ms. Velasquez and some of the team tonight. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for what you do. March is Board Member Appreciation Month. You have a small token of our thanks in front of you. There are some contents there to perhaps get you through the long meetings.
You had me that chocolate, yes.
Ms. Santana, due to the thoughtfulness of Ms. Rios, my assistant, your contents are slightly different than the others.
It's awesome. I got coffee.
You have to encourage your habit.
So every year, board members such as yourselves dedicate hundreds of hours in volunteer time in service to kids. So on behalf of the full staff, I say thank you. Just some quick updates. We had a wonderful experience today at New Britain High School. A little over 2 weeks ago, Senator Blumenthal visited with us on February 15th. He's doing a tour of roundtables around the state, gaining student input on his proposal for the Kids Online Safety Act. And we thought that was wonderful. And then just late last week, we received an email from his staff saying that he was so impressed with New Britain kids that among all of his constituents, all of the schools that he visited, he wanted a student from New Britain High School to be his guest. They're only allowed one at this week's State of the Union address. And we nominated a junior by the name of Cheyenne Ragu. She represented us very well today at the press conference. I've already shared with the staff and with you a link to the Channel 30 story. It's just another point of pride for us as we work hard to become the beacon that I envision we will become. But it was a good day to be your superintendent. Not many days in my work are just that really kind of wonderful, and she did a great job. The senator did a wonderful job of talking about Cheyenne, talking about our school district, talking about his plans for this legislation. And I'm not a betting man, but I think there's a very small chance maybe Cheyenne gets a call out from the president. Small chance. I have no inside information, but it's the Kids Online Safety Act. The senator said today, out of the 100 members of Congress, it already has 65 co-sponsors on both, and he said it was split evenly on both sides of the aisle. And it's also something that the president mentioned in his State of the Union last year. So it's already been two wonderful experiences for all the great things that we know happen at the high school, but now we're getting to share that with not only the Connecticut but the nation. So very proud of that.
It should be done by 8, right? What time does it
It doesn't start until 9.
Oh.
That's past my bedtime too next month. That's well past my bedtime. We received a nice thank you today and also a copy of a press release. A thank you to the board that I'll share with you on my weekly update from the Connecticut Council on American Islamic Relations. It was a thank you for including Eid as a school holiday. So kudos to the board for undertaking that. Finally, as usual, you have, the board has an advance copy of District Dispatch this month celebrating the African American Club's kind of a program that they put on for Black History Month, but also many other things about Black History Month happening here. As usual, some really nice feature stories about the Black History Month celebration, and also about Ed Rising. And Ed Rising is another way in which the district is rising, now expanding into the middle school and continuing to gain prominence around the state. So with that, Mr. President, my report is very brief tonight, and that'll do it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to committee reports, we'll start with finance.
We had a meeting last Monday on which we approved some grant requests as well as some purchase orders, which should come before tonight on the consent agenda.
You and personnel.
We met also last Monday, and we had a very short agenda, and there's a couple things on our agenda tonight. Just one more thing. Can we get a report on the open and vacancy list of the people, the notes, interviews that they have when they're leaving?
Meaning the exit interviews?
Mhm.
Sure, that's something that Dr. Sanders can prepare for the next personnel committee. Yep.
That's good.
Thank you. And policy.
We also met this last month, and there is a policy regarding advanced coursework for tonight to be discussed. There are 2 items still tabled to be discussed. I also did a follow-up with our CAPE contact, and they are progressing along in reviewing our policies and should be back in touch with us by their April deadline.
Thank you. Curriculum.
We met last month to sort of the ongoing work regarding the 2 positions that are going to be Spanish positions that are Spanish language positions here. We're at the 2 middle schools. We're going to be also doing some decision making around that tonight, so it continues.
Thank you. Moving on to board reports. Board reports. Yes.
So, I do want to send just like a general in-district shout out, because I actually do read this, and at the last Cape conference took it with me in my backpack to show other people throughout the state that, you know, we're cooler than you because we have our own magazine. But just a couple of things that I wanted to point out, because you guys always hear me, you know, like shouting out everybody at Slade and Pulaski and in district in general. And I just wanted to show you Mr. Tchaikovsky here, who he and I have worked together for longer than my students have been students at Slade with his turkey drive. And so just to be a parent with him, working with him, and I actually will send healthy snacks to him because I know that my son participates in one of his lunch bunches. And so my son, who every week tries to trade oranges for chocolate chip cookies, knows, and Mr. T catches him. So to see him actually shout it out is amazing. We had the pleasure, those of us that attended the mayor's ball, to listen to the house band playing. That was amazing. If you have never had the chance to, please make it a point to. And then also seeing that Dr. Gasper was going to be featured on WTIC. I still listen to talk radio, so just saying. And also I had the pleasure of being, and the really distinct honor of being part of those in the audience, recognizing African American leadership homegrown here in New Britain. And so thank you. You were nominated and you were recognized, and it was great to see you up there, as was 2 staff members from Slade, and as was Torrance Conway, who I actually went to high school with, not saying how old I am, but...
And one of our student board members,
Yeah.
Daniel Senior.
Yes, he was. And it was so funny because I was like, wow, you're over here. Totally missed his poster. I'm like, wow. But he just, and it was phenomenal because he was so gracious, and he was up there just like the adults. It was just the coolest thing ever. So it was really just such an honor to be able to spend time with him. If you are ever in downtown New Britain at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, the Climb Cart is on the 3rd floor of City Hall, and you can come over, buy something, and interact with our wonderful students who actually will make the change for you, so make sure you bring cash, make the change for you. And listen, it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. So to see snippets of just the positivity that is in our district, I can just tell you as an in-district parent, I have 4 kids in the school district, to see every little bit of, at least pieces of it featured in there, not just the staff and the experience, but that they're, just, we're here and we're happy just to be able to see it recognized. On a community level, I just can't say enough that it's been just a wonderful, wonderful experience to be able to witness this and be able to shout about it in a positive way. So thank you, Dr. Gasper, for the experience.
It's my pleasure. It's our excellent communications team that makes this publication look so good.
Just saying.
Just announcement that Saturday is the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Hartford. Kicks off at 11 a.m. New Britain contingent will be marching, including the Golden Hurricane Marching Band.
And my girl's holding the banner for the contingent, Girl Scouts.
Any other board reports? I just want to mention and send a big thank you to the guidance department at the high school for the help with FAFSA over the past month. It's that time, or it's getting late now, but the FAFSA process has been changed dramatically, and there was quite a few complications associated with that, and a backlog. So the guidance department, as well as other community organizations, have been working really hard to make sure we can support families in applying through the FAFSA process. Okay, and we can move on to student rep reports.
It was really nice hearing all the wonderful things that have been going on in the high school and just in the Graham district in general. I'm really happy for Daniel that he had that privilege and honor of just being recognized for the great student he is. So things just happening in our high school and just in the district in general is the musical Lucky Stiff. It will be taking place March 22nd and 23rd. I believe at 7 or 6 p.m. and tickets are now on sale, so please try to get them. I participated in musicals before, and I know this one's going to be great because all my friends are in it, and I know they'll do an amazing job. Yes. And the library preview at the New Britain Public Library, just a few blocks down, is at 6 p.m. tomorrow night, so whenever you guys leave this building, you can go to that building. So a lot of spring sports are starting right now, including baseball, volleyball, and track, or at least spring track, and our cheer actually came second place in states, which is really cool. Yeah. And the middle schools, De Loretto and Howes, will be coming to New Britain High School for student-led tours. So myself, with along a few other students, will be showing them where their future is and where I hope they go and choose over the magnet schools, because I know a lot of them are pushing for enrollment right now.
So, Ariana, may I interrupt you there? I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Pierce, Ms. Sanford, and Ms. Langer. On the note that you just mentioned, the two offerings that we did for parents to come and see the high school and hopefully it become their choice. So that was a new endeavor, highly successful. Ms. Sanford or Mr. Pierce, any guess as to how many attendees we had on the weeknight? I would guess maybe 80 or so.
150, we're thinking.
Wonderful. So if a portion of them choose to stay here in New Britain rather than choosing a magnet school, we'd be very happy. I apologize for interrupting you, Ariana.
No, that's all right. What else is happening? Free prom dresses are being donated to students who need them right now, and they're available at the library there. And this really is just a big help for students who can't afford to get on their own. So if you do have any dresses that you're not using or can't fit into at the moment, please donate them to the high school. You might still have a prom dress or something.
I did have someone who gave me a ton of dresses to donate. Do we bring them right to the high school?
Yeah, bring it right to the high school and someone will be willing to do that for you. What else happened? This morning, in-house scholarships were due for seniors. So a lot of them just turn their packets in, and a lot of them really do rely on the scholarships that the New Britain community is giving them. And I know I applied this morning, so hopefully everything will go well. And we'll see the scholarship ceremony taking place towards the end of May. And full band started practicing today for their St. Patrick's Day parade. So please go attend that this weekend.
Can I just make one more mention? I'm sorry, whenever she's
Sure.
done. So I was able to attend a tournament for my children who participate in unified sports. And so I have 3 at the high school and 1 at Slade this year. And all 3 of mine that are in unified sports were in the tournament. And I can't tell you just how much fun. It was not just cheering on students, like student athletes. It was parents and families and coaches and everybody. And when I look across, who do I see but a girl I went to high school with? And sure enough, who was right there coaching as a teacher on another city's team. So I can't tell you, I haven't smiled that much in a long time and cried at the same time. But all of my kids got medals, and it was just great that even the students were coming out, students that were coming out from other sports, the band was playing at the start of it, like it was just amazing. So thank you for the experience. Mr. Pierce, all the staff that goes into Unified Sports and Special Olympics, that was just amazing, and I'm just so proud to be a special.
It was a wonderful event.
Thank you.
I did want to say something. Also to Mr. Pierce and the school, senior night was amazing. My son plays on the basketball team and he is a senior. And the way that the families were welcomed, and the ceremony, the pictures of the children as they were growing through the years was amazing. Thank you for that, and it was just a great night that night. Yeah.
Thank you for the student and board reports. We can move on to executive session.
So if I may, just for clarity, because we have guests in the room for both, we have 2 executive sessions tonight.
Correct.
Yep.
So this will be a motion for the first executive session, item A, discussion of workers' compensation matter with attorney Nicole Fleckinger. We'll also call Mary Ellen Manning, Dr. Sanders, superintendent, the full board, anyone else?
And the attorney.
And the attorney. Yes.
Just for clarity, we have to make a motion for executive session. You can go into executive session and come out, and then come back in, and make a motion and back out again.
The next executive session is
Is later.
It's later.
Yeah.
It's later in the, right. So that'll be at the end of the agenda, the second one.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. There you go, please.
To amend the agenda to do item 4B before we do item 4A.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start with presentations. Item B, the 2023-2024 middle of the year district growth plan update.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have Ms. Velazquez with us tonight, and I believe she's going to be joined by Ms. Wurdelow and Mr. Richardson for this presentation. We always want to keep you up to date on our academic progress. We have a lot of work going on to make academic improvements across the board. As we know, those improvements are going to take a while to bear fruit, but we want you to see exactly where we are, and there's certainly some celebrations that are worth talking about tonight. Ms. Velazquez.
Good evening. So just to orient you to some of the sections of the slide deck, I believe there's nearly 30 slides, so we're not going to go over each of the slides, but give you sort of a more high-level overview of each of the sections. The first one is to talk a little bit about our district growth plan. I'm sorry, did I miss a question? So we're good?
No, just a celebration about not talking about the slides.
Okay, I will make sure you do. So the first section is on the district growth plan, and of course it's a plan that takes us through 2026. And then after that we have slides that are specific to reading and literacy, and then there's a section on math, and then we'll end with a section on discipline and grades in 9th grade. And so I will take the first section and call up Ms. Bonillo and Mr. Richardson for the next section. I think the best way to handle questions is to hold them unless it has to happen, and that way we'll have a good Q&A. Lovely. So the district growth plan, you see that, of course, the district growth plan is, in our district, is a document that we created collaboratively with administrators. We then brought it to the board, and the thing that is really important to know about our district growth plan is that we don't only have goals for students, we have goals for adult actions. And that, I'll tell you that in my 25 plus career of doing this, I think that's what's really special about this, right? So we are 4 months in, for instance, in implementation of ARC. The data that you'll see I'm preemptive, won't show huge gains with student outcomes, right? But what we're being very careful about is that the goals and the implementation with fidelity, that we're monitoring really carefully, and that's what adult actions are all about. So in administrative meetings, we talk a lot about this, and I do think that's what will bring the difference. So the next couple of slides talks about those student outcomes in the mid-year. Again, we haven't seen a lot of growth there with our measures in iReady primarily is what we use in both ELA and math at the 4-8 level. And then we also have constructed what we call a data catcher where administrators go into classrooms and we are documenting how much rigor is used with students. And you'll see that slide there is highlighting what the adult outcomes is. It's the next slide. So on this slide here we have adult actions. You'll see at February 2024, which is when we looked at this, we are well on our way. We are on track with each of those measures. However, we're going to look a little bit more closely at the ELA. So for instance, in ELA, our goal in the district is to ensure that there is grade level instruction happening in every classroom, right? We're trying to combat low expectations. We want access to grade level instruction. And so you'll see that in our initial 5 months collecting data, the administrators in the district are saying, about 88% of the time, 88.6% of the time, we believe that that's in place. And so that's interesting data for us because we know that the other end of that, right, the student outcome isn't anywhere near, at those levels. And so we're going to dig in, this is our first initial look at this to say, okay, how are we all calibrating and understanding what grade level instruction should look like? Are we all on the same page about that? And there's some work to be done there. Okay, so even when this measure is kind of telling us something that we don't quite think is right, we're going to dig in and try to understand, right? This is what I mean about this particular district growth plan, that it is about understanding adult actions. Okay? Next slide, please. This just tells you what the measures are across the grade level plans. Next slide. Okay, so the next set are just on reading specifically. So this first slide, you'll see again when we do our presentation about reading, because it really tells the story about implementation of art. And so what you'll see there is the red line indicates for the students in our K-5 that are at the lowest levels. It's actually 2 grade levels below, right? And then the green line shows you who's on target. In an effort to implement with fidelity and make sure that, again, those adults are taking on the instruction, are making sure that there's rigor, and putting in place all the things that come with the ARC program, right? And I kudos for the teachers because in 5 months we've done so much to take instruction in K-5, right? But what we were looking for, rather than just the numbers and outcomes for students, we were looking to make sure that these lines were going in the right direction. And as you see, by March, we're doing that, right? We're severely reducing, right? We're reducing the number of students who are well below grade level and increasing the kids who are on target, right? And so you'll see there that projection line, right? So if all things hold steady, if we continue to monitor that the adult actions are in place, we continue to get feedback to teachers, we continue to collaborate, because a lot of this has to do with collaboration at the school level and at the grade level. Those lines will continue to go in that direction, which is exactly what we want for good implementation in the first year.
And I would just interrupt very briefly to say, just to kind of manage some expectations here, that these are tests, the IRLA and iReady, that we give multiple times a year. We're going to see movement on these tests before we see movement on the state test, which is only once a year. So in my opinion, it will be quite natural if we see little to no movement. Of course, we're hoping to see positive movement, but it would be quite natural if we see movement on these tests that we give more frequently first, before we start to see movement on the state test. One kind of is the predecessor of the other. Thank you.
Thank you. slides gives you some more information about the standardized test. And so in the area of reading, last year when we made our large investment in the comprehensive reading program, we also purchased a new assessment that gave us much more detailed information about what students were doing when they're reading. And so it's called the DIBELS. The English assessment is called the DIBELS. And you'll see on this slide, it gives you a breakdown of how each of the schools did on this measure, right? You see a fall score or winter score and the change. Each time that this is administered, there's an administration, right? So the fall and the winter, we up the ante, right? So in other words, the test is more demanding in winter than in fall, and then again in spring. What we're seeing is it's about flat, right? We have about the same percent of students, 1 in 4, that showed us they were on grade level in the fall, and we see that pattern again in winter. So it gives us some information. It also tells us, where are the schools that we need to go back and take a look and see what can we do differently. So this again is just the school by school breakout after only 5 months of implementation. The next one actually shows the same, it's the same data point, but it shows it by grade level. This is important because in central office we need to know not only, how do we collaborate with our colleagues at each of the schools, we need to think about the curriculum. How is it impacting all our 3rd graders? And so it's important to look at this data in both ways. And you'll see not much change. Again, we're pretty flat there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to hold up to the
Tell
end. So the 3rd grade,
Yeah.
if I go back to the prior slide with all the schools and the native, that's primarily where we're having or seeing
Yeah, so it went from
that equates to the together?
Sure, so you'll see, right, on average, it's about 25% for all the students in the district. In 3rd grade, in the fall, we have 30% on grade level, and then it dropped to 27%, still above the district average, right? But we document that with a 3% point drop. Minimal, not a big drop, but that's how that's noted, yeah.
Okay.
So then we included this slide here on the Spanish reading that says lectura. This is the Spanish DIBELS. And what's interesting about the Spanish DIBELS is that, of course, if you recall, the American Reading Company had been purchased the year prior to this year for Spanish instruction in De Loretto's dual language program. And what's really interesting about this data is to see the students progressing through, right? So we have, now that program is up to 2nd grade, and you see that the students in Spanish are demonstrating some really good targeted, levels, right? So that kindergarten 48%, and the, or even if we look at the 64% rather in winter, 45, 33, those are good numbers for us to grow the program from. And so we wanted to make sure that you understood this data as well as here. We don't average that in with all the Spanish testing either. It will always show up as a different data point.
So the Dos en Uno teachers have been using our now district-wide program 1 year longer than the rest or 2 years longer than the rest?
1 year.
1 year longer than the rest. So they've had 1 year more practice at using the resource that has now become the district-wide resource.
All right, so iReady is some of you know iReady. It's been our universal screen, and by that I mean we administer it 3 times a year for the last, I want to say several years, so maybe as many as 6 years, we can confirm. 6. iReady. It's been in the district for quite a long time, right? And so the reason I say that is because 4 years.
Came in during COVID as a pilot.
4 years. So it becomes our test that in reading, we have maintained it at the 4 through 8. Really important for continuity's sake that iReady data, we have those 4 years to look year over year, and you'll see in this slide, that last slide does that comparison. We don't only compare winter to winter. We like to do this comparison, which is we look at how many are in grade level in fall, how many in winter, and compare that to last year, fall to winter. And you'll see, right, when we do that comparison, we have places where we have slipped, okay, across the board. The blue are the schools the 5 schools that have advanced more students this year than last year. And it's our way of really keeping it in check. Because if we didn't do that fall to winter, right, you see that column where it says change fall to winter, it all looks peachy, right? We're going the extra mile to really understand each year, are we pushing more students forward to proficiency levels? Okay.
But you have a transition too, because you've got 3rd grade coming up into 4th grade, so it's kind of like an apples and kumquats kind of comparison.
Yes,
Student body.
there's a reason we did that. We discontinued it at the K-3 level, and we knew we did that for 2 reasons. One, there's a state mandate that we had to pick off the list, and iReady was not on the list. But also because at the K-3 level, DIBELS and lectura is a much better measure of reading skills, and it informs teacher practice better than iReady. All right, so I'm going to go 2 slides down. Oh wait, I'm sorry. The next slide is, I'm sorry, can you go back up? Okay, so the next slide is, you saw the school by school breakout. This is again, that analysis by grade level, important to us in central office so we know how to deploy and how to look at how the kids are responding to the curriculum. All right, the next couple of graphs are essentially that last column, just depicted in a way that you could see that, for instance, in this slide, the iReady, grades 4 through 8, showing what % of students, how many more students, more percent points are at or above, is another way of saying proficiency, on target. And so we have 5 schools that were able to achieve that, and the other schools have slipped back a little bit in each case. The next slide shows, again, that configuration by grade. Okay, and the last slide in this section is another comparison that many of the principals were asking about, right? As a district, in grades 4 through 8, how are the students across those bands, right? So in the fall, we have 13% of students who were on target, and we have that 69% who were below grade level, right? At least 2 grade levels below. By winter, we've moved that. We've improved, 9% points out of that, the lowest level, and we've increased that 13 to 18%. We're constantly doing sort of this comparison because in a district where we have so few students on grade level, it looks like there's no movement, right? But we really need to understand how good are we at moving the students who are the neediest and at the lowest levels. So now I'm going to invite Chrissy Verolo to come up and talk about mathematics.
She said she wasn't going to do every slide, but she did. I'm not going to do every slide. All right, so looking at math this year, I just wanted to kind of set a context to some of the work that's happening through the math department and across the schools. So a couple of two big things that we're trying to build some habits around in the area of math. One is in alignment with the district growth plan, right? We as district leaders, building leaders, instructional coaches, teachers are leveraging absolutely every opportunity that we have to have conversations, to model, to coach around raising the rigor and the level of thinking, right? And making sure that our expectations are high in the area of mathematics. This year in the district growth plan, we're not just looking at the task that we put in front of kids, we're looking at the kids' responses to the task, which goes into the second habit, which is having student work at the center of all of our conversations. So in every meeting that we're in, beginning in the fall of this year, teachers are coming with whatever the kids did that day, the day before, that week. And we're trying to build habits around not just talking about math and math practices, but how are our kids here in New Britain responding to the math, and then how does that change our teaching? So those are the 2 habits that we're working on diligently, and we spent some time on yesterday during our math professional development as well. So we think that's what's helping in some of our student outcomes. So if you look at the next slide, oh, go back. You were already on the next slide, I think. Sorry, Asia. So if you look at this slide in particular, you're looking at, just like Evie had set up in the reading, right? We've got fall to winter, and then the change from fall to winter. And we know that the iReady test assesses an end of the year standard. So in that big wide column change fall to winter, we would expect everything to look in the blue because kids are moving towards that end of the year standard. But if you look at the third column, winter 23, compared to the fifth column, winter 24, you can see that winter over winter, year over year, and it's not a cohort, right? It's not the same kids, but each year over the grade level, we are making some growth and we are trending in the right direction in many areas. So you can see like Lincoln went from 12% proficient to 16% proficient winter over winter. If you compare the growth, it's not as high, right? But we are seeing changes in proficiency levels for students winter over winter. Two of the places I would like to spotlight, and I asked Mrs. Booker to come here today as the principal of North End, and Arlene Marie Torres, who is also the acting principal of North End, around what led to the growth. So if you look specifically at North End on that slide, we've had an 8 percentage point growth in student proficiency. So in our mid-year meetings, one of the questions that I'm asking of all administrators is, what adult actions contributed to that growth? And Mrs. Booker was very clear and able to answer that question. I should let her answer that question. She'll kill me if I make her come up here. So we know that North End was exited by the State Department of Education for their focus school status, which was centered around math, which is a huge celebration. And so they caught the attention of the State Department of Education and what they're doing. So when I talk to Rolanda and I say, what is it that's happening at North End? What are you doing? There's a sense of calm and there's a sense of simplicity around the work that they're doing. So in her words, she said they're analyzing data with consistency. So if you look at the kind of data that her teachers are looking at, they're just doing it quietly on their own, right? It's the day-to-day work, it's the section checkpoints, it's the unit assessments. And then they are using and leveraging their meeting times. So school-wide data team just happens every month at North End. And they have a data protocol that they use, and they go through, and it's student-specific, and everyone leaves with what our next step is the next day. Mrs. Booker is excellent at constant monitoring and feedback, so everyone knows what the expectation is, and she's constantly giving feedback. That's from principal to teacher, from coach to teacher, and from teacher to student. Setting expectations for small group instruction in math centers, maximizing usage of the iReady math platform, and implementing math intervention with fidelity. So our work at the district level is to take that case study and talk about how we can replicate those practices across all of our schools. Any questions on that? Okay. So the next slide we're going to look at is slide 21.
I don't know if the board has page 21? No, the board has page numbers.
So it would be the red, yellow, and green graph. There you go. Yeah. So the next big work.
Page 37 in the board's packet.
37. So another data point to look at that we look at very carefully is not just changing the number of students that are in the proficiency band, but changing the number of students that were 2 or more years below and moving them across the bands. So as you can see in this slide, the red, right, changed from 56% to 43%, so we're reducing the number of students that are sitting in that 2 or more years below, and we're increasing the students that are almost there, and then increasing the students that are at proficiency level. And so what are we doing as a district to move those numbers? There's a couple of things when I talked to the building principals in the district that they talked about specifically. One is we just increased our access to the iReady math platform. Students are very busy during the day. There's not enough minutes in the day to do everything that they're doing. So in a very difficult conversation with the elementary principals at least, we came to some consensus around sending devices home for all students in grades 4 and 5, so that kids that were not able to access their minutes during the day were able to access those minutes in the afternoon as part of their homework cycle. The other thing that we did was gave some liberties to principals. If certain grade levels are not able to get their students on iReady during the day, they also can send those devices home. And so when I talk to building principals about that reduction in the red, one of the things that they say is the increased access to the iReady platform, because it's really targeted on what individual kids need, and it's kind of a little bit of a gift to families, because the math homework is turn on your iReady and do 15 minutes versus like struggling with Common Core math and the way we learned it versus the way kids are learning it now. So that's one. The other thing we've done is increase our attention on monitoring usage and giving feedback. So we do it from the district office. Amy, our math coordinator, does it from her office. And now principals are starting to do that. So I was at Chamberlain last week, and Manny, the principal at Chamberlain, said, on Thursdays, I send an email to the teachers. It says, this is where you are, this is where you need to get to by Friday. And kids are starting to say, here's what I need to accomplish by Friday. And then they're doing some celebratory practices around that as well. So those are some of the things that our teachers and our principals are attributing to some of the successes that we're seeing in math. And then we know overall proficiency-wise, we have a lot of work to do. So fidelity of implementation to the IM program, increasing the rigor is a focus area for us in all of our conversations. And then the last thing is the math department has done some really outstanding work in building engagement during math. So bringing in 14 practices from building thinking classrooms, which get kids up and off their feet, learning on vertical and non-permanent white spaces with flexible groupings is really showing some promise, and we had our teachers engage in that yesterday as a whole district. Like we had them actually do that and do the math, experience it, and then think about how they can bring that back into their classrooms, across elementary schools. Any questions about that?
I do have one. Yeah. Tracking back to the North End success, do you have a time frame in your plan as to when can we roll out getting it to the other schools in the district, or is that something that's still being planned out?
So that's like my whole job. That's the whole thing. And so we do that in a bunch of different ways. So we have administrative council, and so we as an administrative group meet and we are beginning to share practices. We have principals council where principals are sharing practices. Principals have smaller meetings with me, networked, and so one of the things we're moving towards is principal spotlights and highlighting the strengths of each of the principals, because they all have them, right? And the buildings all have strengths, highlighting those practices across, and then I follow up in my individual site visits in the building. So we're kind of getting into a good routine.
Oh, thank you.
Mrs. Booker just can't leave.
Mr. Kane.
This has totally related, but not based on the work that you guys have done and are doing right now, but looking at the numbers fall to fall, we always have that summer slide. And we're oftentimes starting right back at square one with the same percentage in fall 23 as we did in fall 22. So just thinking and just putting it out there, not something I expect you to answer, but as a district, is there anything that we can do differently to help prevent some of that summer slide so the kids are coming in at a higher baseline next fall than they came in this past fall? Because that's, if we start out at 2%, grow to 10%, and then in the fall we jump back to 2%, we're starting at the same place again and having to build back up. And great if we get to 15, but if we can start at 10 instead of starting at 2, that's huge. So I don't know, just.
So I know we're doing a lot of work around consistency in curriculum. So that's one, right? Like knowing that kids are moving from one grade level to another grade level. So we've got that consistency with IM and math, and we're building that consistency with ARC in reading. That's one, I think, huge. We also need to kind of keep in mind that iReady, and I did not know this as a building principal until I got very angry with the iReady consultant, because it's measuring against a year-end standard. So when you're looking at iReady, you're going to see that fall number really low because it's measuring towards the end of the year standard. So when the consultant was in the building saying, I'm like, there's no way that the kids dropped that much. It's impossible. And then that was the little clarifying
It's peculiar
point.
about the test, and the way I explain it is, in third grade, in September, the child takes the third grade final exam. So the idea is by taking the final exam at the start of the year this is what our children need to learn by the end of the year. That's the premise on which the test is based, but it makes it a little bit harder to digest the data, as you say.
Makes sense.
Yep.
And then the last thing that I think Lily can speak to is something that we're doing in reading is level checks. So we're checking the integrity of our tests or our assessments. So lots of times classroom teachers say there's no way these spring levels were what they were, and many times it's because they weren't actually accurate as to where they were. So Lily's implementing some practices in reading to make sure that what we say they are is what they actually are.
So that's where teachers or coaches or an administrator will go back and reassess a child to see if they agree. Oh, you thought Tony was on a level 3, but I find that Tony is on a level 2, or something similar to that. So that's not a gotcha, that's improving our own practice as educators to say, oh, now I understand the criteria better. Thank you. Is Mr. Richardson up next? Mr. Richardson.
It's the fun part.
Good evening, everyone. Does someone say this is the good part? Thank you, Mr. Reed. All right. I get to talk about student success, attendance, and behavior. So this is slide 25. Let's skip up to that. Yes, so the next slide. First, we're going to start out with 9th grade on track data. We looked at this data last year as well. Currently at the end of semester 1, well, we've already started semester 2, but this data is from the end of semester 1. You can see from this data that 448 9th graders passing 9th grade English class, 101 failing. We're a little bit better than last year at the percent that is failing. We're at about 82% passing. Those students, out of the 101 students, 81 of them are attendance concerns, chronic absences of students. You can see that is up from last year as well. In math, 401 students passing, 175 students failing. That's about a 70% pass rate, and that's way up from last year in the failing end of that, and 134 students are a chronic absent concern as well. So I know that what we're doing to try to support this stuff is Laura Volke, Damon Pierce, the principal, our department heads are doing walkthroughs and working with staff on data teams to support our 9th grade students. I know our deputy superintendent just looked at varsity tutors again to see what we can do for some of our students in English and math as well. So we know it's a problem with 9th grade in particular. We want to get them started off right on the right foot and not have them failing, but it's something that we're working on. Okay. Next is our DESA summary, and DESA is what we use as sort of a screener for students in the area of social and emotional learning and competencies. There are a few competencies that we measure for DESA. They are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, goal-directed behavior, personal responsibility, and decision-making. And what you're seeing is a year-to-year comparison on how our students did with these assessments that teachers give out. We use it in most of our schools in K-8, not all of them. I think we're missing just like 2 schools. And at the high school, we use it on a case-by-case basis for students. All right, you see most of this information is swinging in the right direction, and even if it's not, it's still at a high percentage that's reaching typical or strength areas. The next slide is behavioral incidents and suspensions from January of last year to January this year. I'll give you a chance to look at this, but our highlights are the incident numbers are down. So you'll see a negative 675 total incidents in the area of blue going in the right direction. You'll see that ISS is, there are more students going in ISS than OSS this year, and that's intentional, right? You'll see ISS numbers increase and OSS numbers go down, in particular because we're implementing strategies like vector training, which we got started late, SEL, curriculum like Second Step in our middle schools. So we're attempting to proactively reach students through restorative practices. All of our administrators have been giving training at different levels on hacking school discipline. Our deans and our BSAs are currently being trained as well. And I can't, I'll be remiss if I don't mention the addition, thanks to the board, of our assistant coordinator of school culture, who has brought together a district-wide team too, and does all of our training for our BSAs and our deans. So I think we're moving in the right direction there. We hope to see continued improvement. Next up, you'll see chronic absenteeism, and I think this is huge, as we are definitely moving in the right direction here. We'll get to specific schools in a second, but you can see this is down from last year at this time. Some of our great improvements include grade 3 and grade 4. You would notice that grade 9 is a concern, getting 9th graders to school, but overall, the decrease of 3.38% is great. Cool. All right. And here we see our chronic absenteeism numbers. And again, spots with large gains. We got Chamberlain, Howes, Vance, and TC, all with great numbers, pointing out just a couple of schools going in the other direction. But overall, again, great numbers here for chronic absenteeism. We thank Joe Babachek and Tim Maya on the work that they do with our schools, and all of our family support personnel that's in our buildings as well. And then I get to wrap it up for all of us before we have questions. So in summary, student performance has remained the same in the first half of the year as compared to previous years, with a few exceptions. Systematic changes have started to make a difference in instruction as measured by adult outcomes, including instruction aligned to grade level standards and lesson plans with grade level rigor. These changes to rigor and instructions will begin to make their impact on student performance in years to come. We are already seeing growth rates for most schools. Eventually that growth will show up in the proficiency scores. And I just want to say not only in academics, but definitely in behavior as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
So that's been a lot to digest, Ms. Velasquez. We have another presentation to do. So, Mr. President, I don't want to presume we can continue on as planned, or we could table this presentation for another time. It's at the leisure of the board.
How do you feel? How long will the next presentation be?
How long do you anticipate? Without a lot of pressure to go fast. A 10-minute presentation.
Oh, we can do that. Yeah.
We do have some guests from the police department behind you, though, Ms. Velasquez, and they're waiting very patiently.
And on the clock.
I don't know, is Tina's coffee gonna wear off?
Please go.
Yes.
Please go for it. So as we're coming to the microphone, this, as the board knows, it was a very difficult but also a very thoughtful decision to choose American Reading Company as our new reading resource. That was a required choice by legislation from the state of Connecticut. As a reminder, we conducted a wide stakeholder input process, at least as wide as could be done in the very short timeline that was given by the legislation of the State Department of Education. It's a massive investment. Thankfully, we were able to cover this unfunded mandate with ESSER funds. The investment that we have right now is $2.7 million just for this first year, including purchases of materials and training. And Ms. Lily Stewart is going to take us through this presentation.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I'm excited to share some ARC updates with you based on our implementation of the American Core Reading Program. Next slide.
It's blank. That's what we got.
Okay, so this is our literacy block, and basically our literacy block addresses the 7 components of reading, and it allows the students opportunities for direct instruction in each of the components as well as practice. So we're trying to give the students that whole, the whole child approach to reading to improve their overall outcomes. Next slide. So So this slide explains how we're trending. So basically, we want our students that are in the emergency levels or at-risk levels to decline, and we want our students that are proficient to increase. So you should see the green line going up, you should see the red line coming down. So currently, our trajectory is looking really good. We meet with administrators and instructional coaches often to discuss the individual data at each school. So we've been able to really push toward proficiency as a result of those conversations. Next slide. So these are some of the metrics that we use from the platform called School Pace. So the Reading Curriculum American Reading Core has a platform called School Pace, and some of the metrics in that platform allow us to monitor adult actions. So conferences and small group instruction, it basically talks about how teachers have interactions with students outside of that whole group lesson. Are teachers meeting with students in small groups or individually? So students in the green are being met with at a rate of 80% over 14 days. At-risk students are being met with at 78.7%, and emergency students are being met at a rate of 76%. So we're working on actually kind of flipping these numbers a little bit. But these are really good numbers because we have teachers in the habit of meeting with kids, and that was a structure that was kind of difficult for us to build. So now we're looking at how often are we meeting with the kids that are in the emergency and at-risk levels and increasing those numbers and keeping the meetings current for students that are proficient, but giving the kids that need the most help, the most interactions with teachers.
So I just want to highlight that, Mr., if I may for a moment, is this is brand new practice for the district. What I mean by this is we're putting numbers on what we see the adults do. We're measuring the adults at least as often as we're measuring the kids, right? We have to change the adults, their practice first, and then the kids' success will follow after that. So as Ms. Velasquez said, what I like to call, we are quantifying adult action. So what we see in the classroom when we visit classrooms, it's not a gotcha, it's about creating a picture of this is who we are as Vance School. This is who we are as North End School. And then we put the principals together in principals council, in admin council, in network meetings, in meetings with the other staff to say, hey, we think we found something at the school across the street or the school across town. Let's get you talking to each other. So by quantifying adult action and saying, this is how often we're doing what we think we should be doing and growing those numbers, this is brand new. And it's not something that you see in many school districts. Again, and Ms. Velasquez indicated earlier. So sometimes when we look at numbers, we assume, well, those are about the kids. No, these numbers are about the adults and how often they're carrying out the best practices. Thanks for letting me interrupt.
So administrators communicate regularly with teachers around these numbers, and then we provide individualized support for teachers to help them understand why we want equitable conferences, why it's important to meet with the students that are at risk on a more frequent basis. So we're working on like those mindsets. So the next metrics that we look at are power goals. So teachers meet with students to confirm or update a reading goal. So 77% have done this in the last 14 days. So we're providing instruction based on these power goals. So if we don't identify the appropriate discrete skill that students need, then when we're providing targeted instruction, we're missing the mark. So it's always important to keep those levels updated, keep the power goals updated, so we're constantly checking in on those things. Time on reading, teachers enter steps. So this is like a really big deal. So in every school, they have a different approach to how they celebrate reading, but we have a district goal for reading steps, and everyday students are actually acquiring 4 steps, 2 steps in school, 2 steps at home. And the objective is for students to increase their reading volume and practice their reading more often. So every school has a different initiative. So you have like Smalley School, the students use their steps like frequent flyer miles, and all of the students cumulatively, when you put all their miles together, they're trying to get to the moon. It was like a big deal. Okay, we're doing big stuff out here. So every school has ways of celebrating student reading, but we're tracking it. We're tracking it. So this is a conversation point with teachers as well. And lastly, reading on target. So students on target to be at grade level by the end of the year. We started the year off at 9% and we've increased to
4%, and this number is steady climbing. So this wouldn't even be accurate today. Like if I made these slides a week ago, this number wouldn't be accurate because the students are growing on an ongoing basis and we're constantly monitoring students. Next slide. So some of our early successes is just getting kids in books. This new curriculum has very engaging books. So we have kids with an average of 239 steps, which is 3,585 minutes of reading. That's a lot of minutes of reading. So the kids are very engaged with it, and they love the new books. They love reading. They complete their reading logs. So we're very excited about that. And another measure that we're looking at is reading engagement. So this is around how kids feel about their reading, right? How eager are kids to pick up a book? Do kids read on their own time? And this measure is something that we take very personally. And so we're working on helping students develop their preferences for reading. What type of books do you like to read? Where's your favorite place you like to read? And all those things, I think no one has ever really measured that, right? So now that we're looking at that and we say 57% of our students are avid readers, meaning they read without being prompted and they read for enjoyment, we would like to chase after that number and get it up to 100% of our students reading for enjoyment. And the good news is, even our struggling readers, like even a struggling reader can love reading. So that's something that's been a mind shift. Just because a student struggles doesn't mean they don't like books. Books are just hard for them. But we have kids that are tackling books every single day and getting their reading steps, so we want to acknowledge that. Next slide. So as far as adult actions are concerned, we've been working with administrators to do PDSA cycles. So basically administrators look at their school data, they meet with their coaches in a triad, so not triad because it's usually the math coach, but the math coach is not part of it. So we'll just say duo or partnership. So they meet with their literacy coach and they look at their data and they determine a problem of practice. So like what we just discussed a moment ago was that the students that are proficient are being met with slightly more often than the students that are at risk or in emergency levels. So they go after that and they say, look at your frequency, and they try to tell teachers, manage your time. How do you schedule more interactions with this particular group of students? And so they're training teachers up. So that's the strategy. And then the measure. So most of our measures go back to the school PACE platform where all of those metrics just came from, because you can't really measure adult actions without having a measure, like a tool. So we've been using school PACE. It's been very, very helpful. So some of the takeaways are that we're all in it. We are all in it, from the students all the way up to administration, all the way up to central office, and back down. It's all reciprocal. We're all working together. So daily practice in discourse, this is just a little bit of what the class, next slide. This is what the classrooms look like. So
I think we're missing a word. We have lots to celebrate.
Yes, we have lots to celebrate. I should put that in caps. So our classrooms are really buzzing. When you walk into our classrooms, our walls talk. So one of the things is we do walkthroughs with teachers in the classroom, and we also do walkthroughs with no teachers in the classroom. So the walls are supported, and students have multiple opportunities for discourse, to talk about their favorite books or to talk about complex text. So the students are really engaged with their instruction, and we're glad to see that. Next slide, in summary. The summary is we're doing great. We're 5 months in, and we've actually had other school districts wanting to come in and see our implementation. It's been really difficult.
Who are some of the districts that have visited us?
So far we've had Manchester come in, Suffield came in, and Windsor is scheduled to come in next Monday. So the school districts are really looking at us, and ARC has highlighted us for being ahead in implementation, and we're just in it. So what else do I want to say to you guys, except we're monitoring student proficiency and we're monitoring adult actions, and we are very hands-on about our implementation of our new reading curriculum. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Any questions?
No, just a comment, like, great work, because I'm one that I like to celebrate, small victories, because if you celebrate the small victories, it leads to more victories, and then you add them all up, they're great victories, right? Coming from having 6 children and seeing their growth, and just looking at these numbers before I was on the board, looking at the district and how we were categorized as a failing district, seeing these growths puts hope, a sense of hope. So thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. Everyone that presented as well.
Thank you to the teachers and administrators of New Britain. They're the ones carrying it.
So I want to say thank you to the board. So these numbers are a beginning. They're a start. They are encouraging. And sometimes as board members, perhaps it would be easy for you to lose your connection to this. So I want to remind you. So after you appointed me, but even before my first day, I asked for a change. I asked that we have a deputy superintendent and not an assistant, and you granted that request. I asked that you have 2 new administrators, and we have a former board member with us tonight who was part of that decision. Said, I came to you and I explained the need for academics and accountability officers, and now we have 2 expert principals in Ms. Bordelot and Mr. Richardson guiding our principals. I came to you and I said, we need to do some more reformatting. We need a reading specialist. We didn't have a reading specialist district-wide, and we have Ms. Stewart. I came to you and I said, we need a district-wide school climate and culture expert, and we have Ms. Kata Soler. That comes from your support, your trust, and the team and I thank you for that. I hope you see that it will be a long, slow process. All right, what I've said to the administrators is, I've done it before, and Ms. Bordelot and I were just talking about this today. Turning around a school or turning around a school district, it's not a mystery. The research on how to do it is quite clear and quite plain, and it's actually quite simple. It's not creative thinking. It's doing the stuff you heard about tonight a million more times, over and over and over again. Tiny little improvements, tiny little incremental improvements over and over and over again. There will be no thunderclap, there will be no golden rays of sunshine that come down from the heavens. It's going to feel like this, and there will be days when we go backwards. And as I said, it's going to feel like being on a diet for 3 years. But if you stay true, it's okay if you cheat every once in a while and you have a quarter pounder every once in a while. But if you do this process and you stay true to measuring yourself, measuring the adults, and making changes in the adults over time, it'll happen. The tough part is about to begin. The tough part is about to begin because you're seeing these changes, and it may be a while. It may be another year or 2 or 3 before we see movement in the state test scores. I wish I could promise you that it'll be quicker than that, but for those of you who interviewed me for this job, I told you this was a 3 to 5 years of work, and I stay true to that. We're not even through 2 years out of those 3 to 5. It'll come. My confidence remains very high. However, the toughest part's about to start because people are going to start to get impatient. And mistakes that many school districts make, most especially urban districts, is when things don't turn around quickly, they blame the thing. Oh, we must have chosen the wrong reading tool. Oh, we must have chosen the wrong math curriculum. And out of love for kids, school districts make the mistake of saying, well, let's change that. We have to help these kids right away. And that's just not how real lasting change will happen. We've got the right tools, we've got the right people. Now begins the grind of being on a diet for 3 years. We'll get there, but it's not going to feel exciting. Some days we're going to feel dejected because the scores will go backwards from time to time. But this is what it looks like. Your role in approving budgets, in approving personnel changes, and keeping us honest, expecting us to come to you with this data, and our role of constantly changing the adults, never being satisfied. So I want to remind you, you have played a role in some of these positive changes you've heard about tonight, and I appreciate your support. So thanks to you.
Thank you.
I don't have an objection, no.
All right. Can I have a motion to amend the agenda Item 7A, executive session for the purpose of discussing matters of school security.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Do we invite some people, please?
We will be inviting.
I'm sorry, no, you're just moving the agenda item
Yes.
right now. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yep.
All right, can I have a motion to?
Motion to go into executive.
Motion to go into executive session with the full board, superintendent, the representatives from the New Britain Police Department,
Mr. Spalding, Mr. Richardson.
Mr. Spalding, Mr. Richardson.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
We are now out of executive session. Moving on to item 5A, new business. Can I have a motion to approve minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting on February 5th, 2024?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, Board acceptance of the enrollment report.
So moved.
Second.
As the board can see, we continue to trend up 2.4% over this point last year.
Questions? Okay, item C, Board acceptance of report of personnel transactions and extracurricular appointments.
Before we have a motion, Mr. President, we are following past procedures. We have 2 administrative appointments, 2 internal appointments tonight. And those have typically come before you in this way, but we always like to give these people a chance to have remarks. So with us tonight, we have Mr. Edgar Garcia, who's been nominated to move to the associate principal opening at the high school. And also Mr. Todd Verdi. Again, thank you to the support from the board to be moving to become the principal of the alternative education program at Brookside Extension. So I guess we'll go in order of appearance. Mr. Garcia, you want to give some remarks? I think.
So I won't pull out my slideshow that I have.
I heard you only had 42 slides.
So good evening, everyone. I just want to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to the families of New Britain, our Board of Education officials, and Dr. Gasper, along with our district senior officers, for being selected as the new associate principal at New Britain High School. I am truly honored and excited to take on this leadership role. Thank you for placing your trust in me to support the principal, faculty, staff, and most importantly, the students of New Britain High School. I have a deep passion for education and am committed to fostering an environment where all students can thrive academically, socially, and personally. I look forward to collaborating with the dedicated team at New Britain High School to uphold high standards of teaching and learning with open communication, creative problem solving, and unwavering focus on student success. I am confident we can make a positive impact. Again, thank you for this incredible opportunity. I am eager to roll up my sleeves and get to work supporting the New Britain High School community. I will give my full effort to this role and hope to play a part in the school's continued growth and achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Okay, Todd.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'd like to thank Dr. Gasper and the Board of Education for another opportunity to, in my career in educational leadership with our students in New Britain. Over the past 30 years, I've had the opportunity to work with many students and players and just in many capacities in the city, whether it was coach or teacher, and have enjoyed them all. And as I continue on now with the Brookside Extension Center, taking in some of our most needy students, just really looking forward to the challenge and getting them back on track as they too will become citizens of this beautiful town of New Britain. So thank you for the opportunity and have a great evening.
Thank you. Before I approve the transaction report, I just want to say, as I do in my normal course of business, I conduct planned visits to schools, and one of those visits was to Brookside Extension, and it was a pleasure to see our students who've had some of the most troubling behaviors in a place that feels like a school. So even though some people still call it the Butler Building, Mr. Verity's leadership has turned that formerly abandoned building into a place that feels like a school, even though.
Behind
Correct, correct. So the board might remember we were renting 2 rooms from the Boys and Girls Club, and we got good service and good partnership from Boys and Girls Club, but we used our ESSER money to renovate the former Butler building behind Pulaski, and so we no longer have to pay that rent, and we can save those monies and put them into a solid program for our students who were expelled. So
Are we to rename it?
that'll be up to the board. Right now, we're using its former name called Brookside Extension Center, but certainly the board can take action on a new name if it wishes to.
What do you think,
You can
Tom?
chair that committee.
Sure.
You like the name?
So with
Isn't
that,
it confusing with the, isn't the other one?
That's why I said
Isn't
saw
it
it.
Brookside?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
correct, Brookside
We
School,
can do better
but
than
these are
that.
the official names as of now. If the board would like, we could bring forward some recommendations.
Whenever you're ready, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, we can approve the personnel report as we typically do.
I don't believe we need a vote on the board acceptance items. Is that true? We don't.
I think we need to
No,
vote,
we
yeah.
voted on it.
Yeah, we have board acceptance. Okay. All those in favor of accepting the personnel transactions and extracurricular appointments report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to item D, board approval amended position request, 2 full-time employees and Latinos in action.
Thank you. So I believe Dr. Maya Molina has some follow-up data at the committee meeting. The board members of it was either the curriculum and/or the personnel committee requested some input from parents and students.
Yes, I was not at that meeting, but Ms. Velasquez had done the presentation. So one of the questions was to inquire about the current 7th grade students at Slade and Pulaski, if they would be interested in taking Spanish as an 8th grader. So we surveyed 200 students at Slade, and 100 of them, 50% of them, said they would take Spanish in 8th grade. And we had 71 students, 35%, that said they were interested and wanted to know more about it. And 29 students said that they weren't currently interested. And at Pulaski, we surveyed 170 kids, so it was about 95 students said they were interested in 8th grade Spanish, about 57%, and 49 or 29% were interested in hearing more about it. They were a maybe. And about 15%, 25 students said they were not interested. There was also a question regarding whether or not Latinos in Action would be able to support us if we were to do a club. We surveyed the current 6th and 7th grade students at Slade and Pulaski. So we had about between 15 and 23% of students said they would be interested in a club. Again, those are the current 6th and 7th grade students going into next year. We had between 25 and 40% of the students saying that they were interested, but they wanted to know more, so they were a maybe. And then we had between 30 and 60% that were not interested in a club. And then the third question that was asked was regarding Latinos in Action as an organization, if they would support a club at the 2 middle schools. It is considered an elective course. So they would support us if it was a club, but not directly. They wouldn't be able to offer us technical support, because if it's a club, you wouldn't really be able to require the assignments that are required of an elective course. The kids have to submit their basis of their leadership skills, the tutoring sessions, and the curriculum as a whole. So that is where we are with that.
Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item E, can I have a motion to approve a new position request for 1 full-time ESL teacher?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion on this position request?
Just for those who weren't on the personnel committee, this is just a shift. There's no additional FTE. It's moving, excuse me, currently unfilled FTE from De Loretto to the high school.
Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, would anyone like to remove any items off the consent agenda? Okay.
And it's a long consent.
All right, can I have,
Slideshow did it tonight. There's a lot of information tonight.
can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. And I believe
May
we,
I add something to the agenda? It'll be quick, I promise. I would like to move to make the graduation date officially March 11th instead of tentatively.
March 11th.
I mean, sorry, not March, June 11th.
You just made friends with a lot of seniors.
Sorry, just to give the families time to plan for graduation.
June 11th?
June 11th. It's tentative, I just want to make it official so that families have time.
That's too early?
So currently, we just checked this, and my team will help me. Due to the snow days, the current last day of school is June 11th, a Tuesday.
That's the last
Oh,
day
the
of school.
15th is nobody allowed, is the graduation date.
Tuesday, the 11th, is currently the last day of school, after having 2 snow days so far. So, but you are correct, the board can choose to have, can choose to set its graduation date now and to give families time to plan. So, Mr. Pierce, what has been the tradition regarding graduation date? Who's behind the podium? So, the tradition has been, is it the day after the last day of class?
That's what we're just debating. We've usually, my recollection is that we've had a day, so we have the last day, then we've had a day off, and then we've had the graduation ceremony. And the reason for that is to make sure that the counselors have time to double check all of the graduation requirements, because the last day, right, and then having a ceremony, the immediate next day is a bit of a challenge.
So if the board wanted to move on that, it would be
Thursday the 13th.
Thursday the 13th, which would give us Friday as a potential rain date, which would be helpful.
okay. So can you
I'd like to-
rephrase your
Yes, I'd
motion?
like to rephrase it. I'd like to move to make June 13th the graduation date, giving families time to prepare.
Second what?
13th.
And we have a second by Mr. Kane. Any more discussion on that?
And the followers of 13th, okay with you?
No? All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Yes.
That's good.
Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Moved.
And happy Board Appreciation Month. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.